Hello and welcome to another episode of Tell Me More Hospitality Data Podcast. I'm Stephanie Ricca with CoStar News, as always, here with STR's Isaac Collazo and CoStar's Jan Freitag. Hi, guys.
Good afternoon.
Happy Tuesday.
I never know what you're going to come out with. I love it. So it is nearly the end of March, and typically here's when I say, oh, last month when we talked, but we saw each other just last week at the Hunter Conference. Listeners, you likely heard and maybe saw our special episode recorded at Hunter last week. That was fun.
That was great. It was actually really cool.
I know it. That was our first
We had
video.
a good time.
We had a good time, and it was the first time that I made you guys be on camera, and I think everybody looked great. We sounded good. That was a good time. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
I think the headline to the episode was sandwich.
It was not sandwich. You keep going. Sanguine. So I cannot enunciate, but it's not sandwich. Although I've been thinking of the metaphor. The industry is like a sandwich.
See, so it might also be a sandwich. And just to catch listeners up, Isaac said on our special Hunter Conference episode that the word that he would use is sanguine. And so we've had a lot of people chattering on LinkedIn about what sanguine means. And I think, Isaac, you educated people. And
That's my job.
That's what we're here to do. We are not just pretty faces and pretty voices doing entertainment. We're educating too. Now, normally at this point in the podcast, in addition to saying, saw you a month ago, I share the headlines since last we spoke. And even though we last spoke exactly 1 week ago, the headline is very clear. Listeners want to know more about hotel demand. Now, not that I want you to influence the news, but people are very keen to hear that demand is possibly trending up. Now, you both mentioned it on the pod last month. You've written about it in the Weekly Insights. We publish on CoStar News. Jan mentioned it at Hunter last week from the main stage. Isaac teased a little bit of it in our special podcast episode from Hunter. And people are clicking. They want to know more. So let's just jump into it. Isaac, break down February for us for real.
Can I tell you more? Okay. Oh, that's the name of the podcast. That's right. All right.
Say it, Jan. Ask him.
Tell me more, Isaac.
Okay, I'll do that. Everything begins with demand. That's what I learned when I was a young little buck in the hotel industry when I was in my 20s, that nothing happens without demand, specifically heads in beds. That's why demand is so important. But let's get started. February U.S. RevPAR growth was 4.3%. It's the highest since January of 2025. So that's the starting point. And it was occupancy led, 2.3 percentage points. That was also the most since October 2024. Now comes the rooms growth, the largest rooms sold growth since early 2023 at 2.9%. So again, it's growth on growth. So this is real. This is real growth. And if you want to look at it in absolute level, the industry sold 2.7 million more rooms this year over last year. So again, it's a huge amount. And that's the most rooms sold for the month of February ever since STR began collecting data.
Jan said, wow, I feel like, Isaac, you paused for impact. I wish I had a soundboard to give you like a hi-hat or a toot of a horn, a ba-dum-bum.
So it was an amazing month from a demand side, and all hotel types saw demand advance, ranging from 4%. Guess where, Jan? Mid-scale grew 4%, all the way to economy, which grew 0.6%. So most of the chain scales were in the 3% area. So, it was just widespread. And I've read a couple of things that made me a little upset. Oh, it's easy comps. That's why we're seeing this growth. I think it's more than easy comps. That's why I keep going back and looking at it over time. Because again, when you look at it, it's like, this is the best February ever. It's like, no, yes, this is growth on growth. This is important to say something's changed. And what we started seeing is the upward trend is clearly seen in the daily data beginning at the end of last year. You can almost see where it was coming down through the beginning of the fourth quarter, mid quarter, and then it starts moving upwards. And really, it's been for the last 6 weeks, we've seen growth in our industry, straight up growth. There was only 1 week that we hadn't seen growth, and that was during Winter Storm Fern, right? Because that held back a lot of things. The other thing I noticed on the data as I keep looking at it is the relationship between TSA screenings and hotel demand is returning. I know we don't want to talk about TSA right now because on March 24th, it's not great to be traveling, especially through Atlanta, Houston, and some other airports because
No.
screening lines are so long. But one of the reasons I think screening lines are so long is people are traveling. In fact, February screenings were up 2.7% year over year. And Jan's making faces at me.
This
And
is his favorite data set.
But
I
part of the people are walking out because they haven't gotten paid, I think that is
oh,
definitely part of it. But
right.
Yeah.
on the other side, we've seen ICE agents now being deployed to, I think, 14 different markets. My
Yeah.
wife this morning had to fly from Nashville out west to California, and she was extra early at the airport, and, there was like she just breezed through it. So I think it's total hit and miss. But what we
And
see in the news is the miss, is the 3 hours in Houston, the
Mhm.
1 hour in JFK.
yeah, and again, we are see it's unfortunate because they are not getting paid. I understand that makes perfect sense, but at the same time, we're all seeing growth in that travel demand, right? So you're in the middle of spring break, so there's a lot of factors that have come together to cause some of the situations, but particularly in Atlanta, Houston, and other areas. Year-to-date screenings are up 1.4%, and that's something to keep watching because again, that'll be a good given that we're seeing the relationship between screenings and hotel demand, you know, reemerge, that's a good, lead indicator for us as well. The other thing I thought was interesting, the number of submarkets losing demand was the lowest since January 2023. This is the 3rd month in a row that the number of submarkets losing demand has trended downward.
So,
And then
okay, you say that in layman's terms. The
that means
number
there
of submarkets losing demand trending downward. Tell me that in another way.
there is less submarkets that had lost demand in February than in previous times.
So,
And it's the lowest
fewer
number of
okay.
submarkets that are negative since January of '23, I think so, yeah, that was January 2023. So I
Few
think it was
okay.
44 submarkets, if I remember correctly, don't hold me to that one, but I think it was
Okay.
44.
So more
Okay.
submarkets are seeing demand growth. So the
Grow.
growth
Yes.
of demand is wider spread across the
Mhm.
United
Yes,
States. There are very few pockets where it is not the case,
Where
and
it's not
oftentimes
okay.
that can be
That's
explained away with calendar comps. So with event comps, So and you can email Isaac if you want the gory details on which submarkets and why.
exactly right, we have all that. And then another fact, and again, going now to the market level, 47 of the 172 markets that we track sold more rooms in February than ever before. So again, we're seeing I mean, this was very widespread. That's why it's not easy comps. It's something else is going on. There's some emergence, and maybe it's people are just saying, "Hey, last year was really rough. We were scared. We didn't know what was going on with tariffs, policy changes, etcetera. This year, we're back on the road." I was with a client, uh, after Hunter last week, and they're just on the road a lot now. They just,
Mhm.
"Hey, we've gotta get back to business." So I think some of that may be it, but something seems to me that it's changed in the first 2 months of this year. In terms of markets that are growing, it's Orlando, Houston, Dallas, Phoenix, San Diego, Nashville. And then you're also seeing, as Jan wrote about a couple of weeks ago, the AI data center markets continue to see very strong demand. Some of those are in Mississippi, Texas North, Memphis. So again, it's a little bit of everything, but more. And then another big piece, and we're going to talk about group later, is Las Vegas. They had the highest growth of any demand growth of any market. They sold 180,000 additional rooms this month.
But we know why, right? Now I'm forgetting the name of it. Is it ConExpo?
Mhm.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
It used to
Yes.
be Concrete World, or is that a different one?
No,
The
it's the same thing.
big
It's the
okay,
same thing.
okay, okay, the big
But
concrete
it was
aggregate
140,000,
trade show.
attendees, so a very big conference, and it's, first month since 2024 with positive room demand for Vegas. So it had averaged 330,000 monthly demand declines. That's hard to say over the past 13 months. Easy for me to write, hard to say on paper. Uh, Other market that it's never gonna come back, write it off, sell your assets, never go there, it's gone, this market's dead, go away. wow, San Francisco's back. So I know I make fun. Sorry if I'm making fun of it. We all knew it was gonna come back. I certainly
Yes.
did. But there were so many people said it was never gonna happen. It also saw it's the 14th consecutive and largest month of demand growth in that market in February. So, I mean, again, it's really moving forward, and obviously one part of that was the Super Bowl, and that was also really widespread between San Francisco and San Jose, given where the stadium is. So again, very, just interesting, just lots of dynamics this month. So now we're gonna take another piece. Weekends. So we know demand grew by 2.7 million room nights in, February. 44% of that growth was on weekends.
Oh,
29% were weekdays, which we define Monday through Wednesday, and then shoulders made up the remainder 28%, which was Sunday and Thursday. But you know what drove the weekends? It's really about us. Love. We love doing this. Love was the driver of weekends, and why was that? Oh, Valentine's fell on a
Valentine's
Saturday,
Day.
but it was really a holiday trifecta. You had Valentine's Day, you had President's Day weekend that same weekend, and you had Mardi Gras. So that really just drove the weekends in February, especially it was really one weekend that was really, really, really strong. In fact, if you just look at the Saturday of February 14th, that accounted for about 30 something percent of the total demand growth in the industry.
Which, of course, regular listeners to the podcast would have known and anticipated, seen that coming months away.
Yeah, we said it. We said it was gonna happen, and it did. Changing to ADR. ADR increased by 2%. That's the most since a year ago. But again, more importantly, it's still below the rate of inflation because
Mhm.
inflation's about 2.7 to 2.9. And just to give you some context, December 2024 and January 2025 were the most recent months where ADR was above the rate of inflation. So it's been down below that for some time.
Which months again? December
2024
24
and January 2025, because I think
and then
if I remember
January
correctly, it
last
was
year.
3%, ADR was up at
Okay.
about 3% mark. So we've been down for a while. And then just to finish this up, year to date, RevPAR is up 2.4% with ADR at only up 1.4%. So that's a January and February piece. So again, we need to, well, it'll need to change for it to keep up with, so that what do you call it, GoPar and the rest of all the profitability metrics will turn positive. Because right now they're still trending down as well. One last thing on the supply side, just to talk about supply. U.S. supply is up 0.7% year to date. But what was interesting, it's starting to slow again. So, and the reason, and it's going to be minutia in slowing, but it's slow. So February month supply was at 0.65%, January was 0.71%, and December was 7.4%. So you are seeing a slowdown in the
0.74.
Point, yeah, not 7
Point.
point.
Mhm.
yeah,
Okay.
point,
7.7.
I'm sorry, what did I say? I thought I said point.
You
7.4.
said 7 point.
So, no, point. Everything's point 0.6, point 0.7,
I was
point
gonna
0.7.
say, that's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's a
we went
lot.
yeah,
But your point is it's steady, it's month after month after month, the supply growth number is coming down. Now, supply percent change implies the total inventory is obviously growing every month, but also the number of rooms in the pipeline continues to decelerate. We're just seeing fewer new rooms.
right, and the percentage of hotels in the construction remains at levels last seen the post-Great Depression. So, I mean, again, it's really
Great
we are
recession, right?
yeah, the Great
8 to
Depression.
10-ish? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it's so we're about so it's about
11?
14 yeah, 11 to 14%, I don't remember the exact number, but it's substantially low versus because the pipeline itself is big. It's just the percent of hotels under construction remains, pretty low, and it's
Mm.
you have to go way back to the Great, Recession, and so
Now, this begs the question to Mr. Freitag. Do 2 months of data a trend make?
So
3 months
to
of
Isaac
data?
to add to Isaac's fodder here, so running month to date March, right? March 14th, 1st
Mhm.
through 14th, RevPAR up 5.9%. Like, wow,
yeah.
okay, so maybe something is changing. For the record, I don't believe it. I don't believe it yet. I believe the data,
Okay.
but we are way early in this ball game. I'm not going to use a baseball metaphor. I'm going to use a soccer metaphor. We're definitely in the first half here, and maybe just in the first quarter, so to speak. The impact of the non-declared war, hostilities, whatever you want to call it, in Iran, and the impact on oil prices, and the
Yes.
impact on gas prices for the consumers driving their cars or airfares has not yet trickled down into our data. It will, and we will have. And then you add to that the longer TSA lines, and people might be saying, you know what, do I need the headache of this extra trip for the long weekend if I actually might not make it out of my airport? So let's just, maybe put the additional trip on hold, especially as everything gets more expensive and the higher gas price eventually will trickle through the whole economy because so much of our goods are oil dependent. So I want you to be right. I want to be optimistic. I just want to see a little bit more of this war and the high gas price be digested by the American consumer. And then if they say, oh, never mind, I'm still going, then I'm like, all right, now I believe it.
Do you think, let me jump in here real quick. Do you think that, of course, we don't know how long this war is going to last, but just based on impact of the last month, which, as you say, has not hit our data yet, do you anticipate that if it were to hit the data, it we would see that in the summer? We would see it sooner than that, or depending on how long it goes, is that the fear that people will cancel summer travel as we're starting to see the impacts hit closer to home? Jan or
Yeah,
Isaac? Yeah.
so historically, and we released something not too long ago, it was probably a week ago, about the impact of gas prices on demand. And historically, there's not been a relationship, right? Because the gas of driving has historically been the cheapest part of the trip. It's everything else. So as I did say in the
Mhm.
article when I was interviewed, I did say that, this time could be different. I'm like with Jan, it could be different because this time around there's higher inflation, higher cost of living across the board. But historically, again, going back to historical, and we've done this work multiple times, both when I was in the client side as well as on the SDR side, we've never seen a relationship between gas prices and demand.
Yeah.
Again, this could be
Quick
different.
shout out to Hannah Smith. Last year at the Hotel Data Conference, she didn't call it Mythbusters, but something to
Mhm.
the effect of like,
Fact or
here's what everybody
fiction?
thought is true. Let me figure out if this is really true. And she was very, very clear that the relationship between high gas prices and lodging demand is just not
Now
as strong,
I
right?
do the biggest thing, well, again, if it gets difficult to travel, i.e., with the TSA screenings, which I do think is gonna be resolved. Apparently, there's talk already this week as the Congress is about to go into recess, as we well know.
Mhm.
So I think they are gonna reach a settlement and get that resolved. That will take that hindrance out. And then the other piece, you gotta remember that, as Adam Sachs pointed out at the Hunter conference last week, that, the majority of travel is by higher income individuals, right? And so those are the folks that are more insulated against for the gas prices and all that, and same thing with companies, right? So that's why I don't think it's gonna completely slow it down. I know Jan wants to be, careful and wants more months of data, but again, I do think we're seeing some, just looking at March, and March would be, last year, March was down, obviously, but this year it'll be up, just based on the data, it will be up. So,
Yeah,
I think
and keep in mind that April 1 is going to be not April Fools, but is a year when we lap the tariff announcements, right? And that had a huge negative impact on group demand, specifically on group demand, and also on corporate transit demand. And we're going to get into a time period here of what we call easy comps in the business, right? So the math is going to be easier just because last year was poor. So then, even this year, if the performance isn't awesome, we still see positive percent changes.
and
Still
again,
looks better.
yeah, and what I'll look at is how much better. Again, if it are we getting back to normal, or is it beyond normal? And the last few weeks, we've seen something that's beyond normal, right? We've seen growth, real growth versus 2024. And that's what I'm looking at. I may not look at just 25. I'm going to look at 2024 because last year was down, but is it, does this seem right now? Is it, so that's what I'm thinking about.
Two other comments. One is, yes, the high-end traveler is a little bit more insulated, and yes, they like to travel. And the sort of very, 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 very positive spin on the worldwide situation right now is to say, oh, maybe they're staying home, right? The Middle East is on fire. There were the drug cartel wars, or whatever you call that, military action in Mexico. You know, Venezuela airstrikes shut down the Caribbean, so maybe that's not quite as safe. So maybe Americans are just going to stay home. But I think on the upper end, we're still going to see people going abroad. And exhibit A is we were just here on spring break in Tennessee, and we bumped into a friendly couple and asked them where they went skiing. And they said, oh, including airfare, the Alps are actually cheaper than going to Vail. And I heard the same thing about skiing in Japan being cheaper, including airfare, because the lift tickets are easier. And obviously, the après ski in the Alps is much cooler than what we have in Colorado. The
Jan's
other
all about
piece
the après ski. I
exactly.
feel
So
like
so
spritzes and
that's
fondue.
that's on the high end, but I also wonder if corporate America is going to say, "Oh, wow, now airfare is really expensive, and we really have to look back at our travel budgets." And so then therefore, are we gonna see a little bit of midweek weakness if airfare continue to be so high and, you only send your salespeople on the road and you leave internal meetings behind? I don't know. I'm just,
I
it's
don't know.
I think
I
that's
think that's
possible.
gonna get resolved pretty quick. I also I don't think this can go much longer personally because that
Oh.
will I mean, I think it will get as we saw yesterday in the news, there's so much pressure now because of what's going on with gasoline prices and oil prices and the economy. I think it's gonna get resolved, personally. I want you to do that.
I hope, but I also think there's an element of prices stay high as the market tolerates it. And I think we saw that with tariffs. As soon as you could say the word, oh, it's because of the tariffs, we've raised our prices by X amount, and if people continue to pay for it, they will.
Yep, I
They
agree.
will stay high, is what I mean.
You're right, exactly
People
right.
will continue to pay and those prices will stay
And
high.
just to wrap up, because we've been talking about the globe, I think it's important to talk about what happened outside the US as well. So global RevPAR has been on an upswing as well. It was up 5.9% in February and 4.5% year to date. This is a bad, but I'm gonna have to say it anyway. Italy got the gold. Okay, yeah, I got it.
You've been
The
waiting
RevPAR up
all year for that.
30.4. I know. I could see it on your faces. But I had to do it. So 30 RevPAR is up 30.4% on a 25.5% increase in ADR. So really strong
Okay.
ADR. India, China, and Australia all saw double-digit RevPAR gains in the month. So, I mean, again, it was pretty widespread as well. The only areas I noticed of any magnitude that were down were France and Mexico, who saw negative RevPAR. France was not down very much. Mexico was, and it's really coming part of it is due to high-end hotels that continue to see ADR fall, and that's partly due to the exchange rate. So what I found out, I went and presented to some folks a week ago right after Hunter and was talking to the group that handles the Mexico, part of their chain, and basically they said what had happened is those there was an exchange rate fluctuations because the ADR that those high-end hotels charge is in US dollars to the consumer, but then is reported back in
Okay.
pesos, and then you get the exchange rate stuff. So it's just a little bit of noise, and it really is concentrated on high end, and those are the hotels that are mostly charging US dollars to US consumers. So he said, yes, it's coming down, but it's kind of a little bit of both, some noise in there. And then, of course, then you add the cartel violence, which has had an impact in this past several weeks, particularly in the Pacific South or Pacific Central, where Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara, all those big markets that saw some of that violence. And then, everything else from I saw in the country base was pretty much the same year to date versus February. There was very little difference. Obviously, you're gonna see a bigger difference with the March numbers, particularly with the Middle East,
Mhm.
particularly GCC. You have so many markets there that were doing very well that will now
Right.
be, really impacted by the
Yeah. On the Middle East, because I published on that, the last 2 weeks in February, had the Ramadan impact, so that
Mhm.
traditionally, business sort of slows, so those 2 weeks were slower anyways, and then the week after the airstrikes, was way up, and the reason for that was not tourists coming in, but tourists not being able to leave because the
Mhm.
air, airspace was shut down. So you see this 1 week blip where performance out outraced last year, and then it's going to now come down back down. Our colleague Philip Wooler, who lives in Dubai, sent me this Teams message, and he said the planes are leaving full and coming back empty. And I'm worried that that's going to be
Mhm.
the ongoing story for, you know, until at least the conflict ends. But even after that, because it's going to take a while to rebuild confidence in the Middle East tourism sector, I think.
Yes, I think tourism economics said like a 9-month tail, even if everything were to end tomorrow. We've got a story about that on CoStar News on the hotel side about some of the some of the predictions around how that travel impact and airspace rerouting in the GCC will have that longer impact depending on when things resolve.
Yeah, and I think once the security issue is resolved, that's the key thing because you
Mhm.
can't get in and out, and then you're afraid
Right.
that, hey, you
Sure.
might be but if that's resolved, it may be the best time to go to those parts, right? Because the planes are these are big planes. We all know what they're flying in and
Mhm.
out of. They're A380s. So, yeah, it may actually be a good time for travelers to say, go see that part of the world because there'll be probably good deals to get it started again.
Saw on LinkedIn somebody, one of these aviation watchers, commented on the fact that Qatar Airways parked 17 planes or so in Tenerife. They pulled them all out of the Middle East and
Mhm.
put them into some warm weather location so they don't rust, and they just let them park there for a while. So
I
For a
think
little
it's
while.
I think air routes are fascinating. Call me a nerd about that, but I've always been intrigued around the Caribbean, um, and long haul, but short haul in different regions, absolutely fascinating. I mean, terrible that it's a war creating it, interesting from a travel perspective. All right, it is time to dig into our topic of the month. And this episode, the guys are going to join forces and take a deep dive into group business. Now, Isaac hinted a little bit earlier in the episode at some of the data coming out of Las Vegas with a big group event there in the month of February, some of that day of week trend happening. So, group has been, that business segment that is still up in the air. So, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of work around this, and I'm not sure what I got yet. I actually told you on this, I was like, I have a lot of data, and I'm gonna walk you through some analysis, and then we'll see what we can come up with. I have a
Okay.
hypothesis, I have a conclusion. I'm not sure there's probably a lot more conclusions that I
Choose
haven't
your
thought
own adventure. Maybe listeners can send
right.
in their theories.
So first we'll go through the facts. Year-to-date uh, group demand sold or group demand, you don't have to say sold, that's redundant, is the most since 2019. And again, we're only looking at luxury and upper upscale hotels. It was up 2.9% this month. And so the absolute demand was the most since 2019. But
And just
compared to,
again, define how we define group here.
yeah, we only look at luxury and upper upscale hotels for this. And again, we are looking at segmentation. The hotels do provide us with the segmentation. So for all this analysis, if I say anything and you misinterpret, just remember this is only luxury and upper upscale
And it's
because that's key.
rooms sold in increments of 10 or more group. Between 1 and 9 is transient, and we take out the airline cruise, which we call contract at CoStar STR. Don't worry about that. So group transient is sort of the interplay. Group is 10 or more room block
And
nights.
I'm gonna give you a different definition of group and transient as we go through the analysis that I've been
Oh,
doing, so
exciting.
hold on to that, right? So just as a comparison, again, it's the most since 2019, but we didn't beat 2019. But as a comparison to 2019, it was only 350,000 less group rooms sold than in 2019. So that's the smallest gap we've had. So again, and again, it's year to date, it's only January to February, so okay, take that in stride. We have a lot more to go. More importantly, this was the first group growth since last March, right? So we had seen group continually down. So again, something seems to have changed. We don't know if it's a trend, as Jan says, but it seems that something else is at work here. And then I did something I never thought about. We look at occupancy, a group occupancy. Um, we also look at obviously number of rooms sold and the growth. But I looked at group as a percentage of total demand. And among luxury and upper upscale hotels in February, Group demand was 33% of total demand. What's important about that number is it's almost exactly what we saw in February of 2019. In February 2019, the percentage was 33.2. In February 2026, it was 33.1. So again, showing that it was getting very close. That group really did come back. It seems like a normal February. If you wanna think about that, that's what I was doing the
Mm.
analysis, like, "Is this normal? Did we see is this something different?" This seemed more normal on the group side than we'd seen previously.
Did you look at the percentage what percentage group was of total demand last February? So Feb
Ye ye
2025?
I did. I didn't write it down, but I can get that for you.
Okay.
Yes, I did. Yes, because I had it all. I,
Mhm.
I don't remember. I'd be making
I'm
it up.
just
Yeah.
curious. I mean, this it's
Well, it was up, so last February, I'm thinking it was has to be under 33% because
mhm.
since we know it grew year over year 2.9, I just don't remember the exact percentage. And so then that's when I started thinking about a lot of the crazy things I did. So I wanted to cluster hotels. Part of the thing I like about having all this data is you can do something with hotel level data. Not only do we have the industry segments, but we actually have hotel level data. And so we have hotels that give us the number of rooms they sold, as well as how many group rooms, how many contractors, and transient rooms. So what I did in this analysis, I looked at hotels that were comparable. They had to have provided total demand and segmentation data for the past 26 months, all of 2024, all of 2025, and the first 2 months of 26. Okay.
Okay.
They're comparable. So I came out of the 7,000 hotels thereabouts that we have in luxury and upper upscale class hotels. I came up with a group that's 3,495 hotels. So they're balanced. They're reported every
Okay.
single month, and these are group houses. I then categorize these hotels based on their group demand percentage based on the last 12 months of this year or ending in February. So 12 months ending in February. So if you were under 30% group demand to total demand, I'm calling you transient.
Hmm.
Okay. So anything under
Okay.
30% is transient. And then I have them categorized from under 40, under 50, under 60, under 70. But we're just going to group those as group hotels now.
Okay. Lots of group business at those hotels.
And
Same.
so what I found, my first conclusion is group demand this year is more distributed. And it really is in hotels that basically have the space and are outside the top 25 markets. And that was the first aha. That's where I saw the real surge in group demand. It wasn't in your big group hotels, and I'll give you percentages in a little bit, but it was in those more traditional hotels. So overall, group room nights grew more in transient hotels where the group demand percentage was under 30%. Transient hotels saw group demand grow by 2.5% versus group hotels that grew at 1.5%.
Okay. Say that again. Group room nights.
In transient hotels, and those are the hotels with over the last 12 months, only sold 30% of their demand was group demand, right? So that's
Okay.
my definition. They saw group demand this year, this in February, grow 2.5 versus group hotels, which grew
Mhm.
at 1.5%. I'm watching
We
you
need
think
to
this
I
through.
think okay. Jan, what's popping in your mind right now?
So, what I hear you say is that the group demand distribution has changed a little bit towards hotels that traditionally hadn't seen as much group demand, and that this year, in the 12 months ending
And
in February,
or
have
in February,
seen.
because
Sorry, this
the
is just
grouping's
February.
based on 12 months, but we're talking about February.
Sorry, that in February somehow attracted more group demand. And so then the question is why
That's
and
What
how,
kind?
I guess. So are those types of properties, we're all talking about luxury and upper upscale. So those are probably then properties that don't have a ton of meeting space to begin with, but they're
Right.
probably maybe feeling the pinch of, transient demand not being as predictable and are saying, oh,
now
I'll
hold that
take the
thought.
group to build a base.
I don't think it's that. I think what I was thinking about is what you've been talking about, uh, months ago. I think the smaller meetings have returned. So we have again, as you think about even from my conversations with the client last week where they're on the road, they were in a market in a hotel that was a smaller hotel. In fact, their attendees were distributed among 3 hotels because they were just at a traditional hotel, so would not be considered a group hotel because it is a transient hotel. And I think that's what you're starting to see. You're seeing that kind of move out. It's like more people want meetings. The big group hotels are probably already booked up as well. I think that's a booking thing too. If you're a big group house, it's probably hard to get space in those hotels because they have been contracted sometimes several years out. So you do
Mhm.
want to have a meeting. The Tell Me More crew wants to go out and have their annual team meeting. We'd like to be
All
at
3
the
of us, we need
yes,
8
all
we
3 of
need
us.
7 more for a room block.
Exactly. So, but I think that's what's happening. I think that was my first aha. It's like you're seeing that emergence of smaller meetings, and maybe it has go to the last minute booking, and they can't go to top 25. They're going to go to outside the top 25 and more traditional hotels who still have meeting space, just not a lot.
I
Does that
think
make
that
sense?
idea of the decreasing booking window could absolutely play into that phenomenon that you're just talking about, right? That if you are suddenly getting the go ahead from your CEO to have that sales offsite, then it has to happen this month. Now you're scrambling,
Mhm.
and you call the usual suspect hotels, and they're like, "Sorry, we're full already." So you may be displaced out into either smaller hotels or hotels that don't have a lot of meeting rooms, or you have to break up your group, as you
Yeah.
said. Interesting. Okay, keep
And
going.
then the other thing I found that was interesting, which I have not been able to reconcile. So remember, I put every hotel into a category. So the last category were those hotels with 60% of the demand is group. And now over the last 12 months, 60% of the demand was group. That's my
And
highest
you would
category.
okay, so you'd call them group
I mean,
houses.
these are like ultra group.
Those are
I mean,
group?
they're
Okay.
basically ultra group, right?
Yep.
No matter give them a name. Their group demand in February fell 1.5%, and their total demand dropped 0.8%. So the
Mhm.
biggest group houses saw as
Mhm.
a whole, again, saw a change in that pattern that they've had. Yet they're still heavily group, but
Right.
they fell. And again, I was that we were trying to think that one through because I can't, oh,
No, but I mean, you can just add one on one together there. I mean, you could
okay,
just say, look, the first thing is true. We are seeing smaller, so hotels with smaller meeting space, seeing more group demand. The other thing can be true too, that CEOs are saying, oh, we don't want all 150 people to go to that event. We're just going to send 50 people to that
Ah.
event. So even the large association events are seeing a little bit of attrition on the margins, right? Large ULI event, CoStar is a big platinum sponsor, but we're not sending, whatever, 30 people, we're sending maybe 20 people or so. So maybe both of those things can align. Yes, there are group meetings, but the smaller ones are taking up more share versus the bigger ones.
yeah,
Maybe.
it could be.
But
And
you
so,
did not notice this so because we've heard from the public, like the C corps, and Hilton is one such example. Chris Nassetta, for the last year at least, has been saying, our hotels are seeing a lot more demand for small and regional meetings,
yeah.
but it's showing up now.
Yeah, yeah. Again, that's why I mean, there's a lot more work to be done with this data set.
Mhm.
Everything's been categorized. Now it's just a matter of digging, digging, digging. And again, it was interesting just to see these trends, and then to even see some of the ADR trends among these hotels. Um, one of the things I did is I wanted to know how much higher transient ADR was versus group ADR. So
Yeah.
in a transient hotel,
Huh?
transient ADR is 6.3% higher than group ADR, right? But in a
Okay.
group hotel, transient ADR is 18.8% higher than a group ADR.
Yeah, because I booked the room
That's
block
their
a year and a half
plan.
ago.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then you also have compression. right? Because if you're a group house
For
and you're
sure.
bringing a big group, you have real compression at the point. So again, being able to see the numbers and see how these are all playing and how I thought it's
Yeah.
again, I've never looked at it this way where again, I've categorized hotels and we can now dissect, go by markets and things. But I think it's something that we'll continue to look into. Um, again, for group hotels, top 25 markets wasn't the game. It was all outside. So it's just an
I
interesting.
I do think Jan's first point, though, has a lot of merit. That idea of this is good news for those hotels that are not traditionally big group because they've been hearing the message of we've got to lay in what group we can. We are not a traditional group house, but let's go for what we can. That's been a commercial strategy that, we hear about theoretically a lot for the last year. So it looks like that's happening.
And I do think a group meeting plan or group planners are getting more creative. I saw something
Mhm.
yesterday that I had never seen before. So as you listeners, as you know, we all live in Nashville, except Stephanie's in Cleveland. So we keep telling her to move. She doesn't want to move. So she should move. So if she were to move, she would have seen this last night.
Ooh,
So there's a big conference at the Grand Hyatt because my wife and I were taking a walk. But they were also having an event in the residential building I live in because the developer who owns this entire complex called Nashville Yards, Southwest Value Partners, also owns the Grand Hyatt, but they wanted to have something more exclusive for this group, so they actually rented out our arcade and bar area in our residential building. I had
sure.
never seen that done, but I think it's just
Yes.
how creative people are getting. They wanted something exclusive, close enough to the hotel because they didn't want people to walk or very far, but that was like, "Wow, I've never seen that done." But again, the landlord owns this whole complex, and I think when all the restaurants open, you're gonna see a lot more of that within this
And
area.
that amenity, that type of amenity and space is being built into high-end residential, which our colleagues on CoStar News who cover other commercial real estate classes have been writing about, there's so much demand for those amenity rich buildings, which you can see as value for the residents like Isaac,
Yep.
who will go to any building happy hour that the invitation gets posted up next to the elevator.
Exactly right.
But how interesting to think about the ownership or, operating management companies leveraging that different space across their portfolio in a city like Nashville,
I think
where there are many owners like that.
And I think it's just amazing to see it. I thought it was really interesting. They used the space in front of the, Grand Hyatt, as you well know, Stephanie, you've seen that space. Well, you have probably haven't
Mhm.
seen the new space they've built, but it was just an amazing
Yes.
thing last night to watch, see that going, "Wow, this really is cool." How, again, they're
Mhm.
really creating unique experiences. So then they had the little private thing in my building and the more
Sure.
public thing in the yard there. It was just interesting to see that. So I think, again, we'll continue looking back, going to this group. I think there's a lot in this data set that we'll continue to investigate. And Jan hadn't seen it, so I'll have to give it Jan so we can start playing with it and see what we can actually make out, really come to real conclusions with it.
Yeah, and I think the just hearing you talk about, to me, the main takeaways are probably this is the time to lean into smaller groups.
Yeah.
This is the time
Yeah.
to lean into groups with a very short booking window in the month, for the month, in the quarter, for the quarter. This is the time for the salespeople listening to this or to the revenue managers listening to this to go out into your community, into your neighborhood, into your, Fortune 2000 companies headquarters and saying, look, you're not going to get the availability in Nashville, in Houston, in Dallas, in New York. I know you want to have your sales meeting. Why don't you come to Chattanooga? I don't know. Why don't you, figure out how to make this meeting a little bit smaller and have it in a smaller market, but in a hotel that maybe doesn't have as much meeting space. But because if the meeting is smaller, we can do all sorts of cool
Right.
stuff, and do
Activations
offsite
elsewhere.
activations. Exactly.
Mhm.
Yep.
Really interesting. So, off topic but related, Jan, you go to a lot of meetings, and dare I say, you go to a lot of luxury hotel and travel industry
Because I
meetings
have to, not because I want to.
because you have to
Yeah.
correct. So, what's an interesting and exciting trend that you are noticing happening at maybe smaller meetings? Like Isaac was talking about, well, the one in Nashville was big but spread out, but What's an interesting trend for smaller meetings that intrigues you as a hotel guy?
I mean, I think indoor, outdoor,
Mhm.
is definitely the people want to be, outdoors. I mean, after COVID, we
Right.
all want to be outdoors, but I think now, I think that's sort of built into the programming of the events that you have patios or upstairs,
A
downstairs,
window
what
at
have you.
least.
Exactly, that you can open, or a
Mhm.
rooftop bar. I think that's more and more like that. I think the cuisine is going to be continues to be just focused on the market that you're in. You don't want necessarily sushi if you're, sitting in Nashville, Tennessee.
Cleveland?
I mean, sushi's good. Cleveland,
Nope.
but
I draw the line.
Mhm. And then I think even especially with smaller meetings, you just bring, either the music or, dare I say, this is sort of wild, but I was at an event in Dallas 2 weeks ago, and it was outdoors, and they had organized Longhorn uh, cows. What do you call that?
Oh,
Steers. So
like a
you could
petting
take your
zoo?
photo. You could take your photo with a Texas Longhorn. That was
Boy,
different. That was unique. That was fun.
sure.
Uh, I am a Longhorn, by the way, listeners. I am a UT
Oh, okay.
Longhorn.
With the horns. So I think
Horns.
so I think there is this, and you can look at it this way for your regular group, but of course, then there's the incentive travel, and there really the sky's the limit, right? I mean, we hear about this for high end, salespeople that need to be compensated not just with money, but also with an experience, and then the experience can really just take it anywhere, anywhere you want.
But I think the experiential piece is still also the emerging piece, even on the traditional groups and meetings. So at the event I was at last week, they did an outdoor thing at the Alamo, which I think is amazing. I and so they're just giving. So they're in San Antonio. They want what's famous about San Antonio is the Alamo, but to be able to see it, experience it,
Did
and
they take you to the basement?
I don't think they took them to the basement. So I don't know. So not that I've seen. So but I'll take you if we're ever in San Antonio to the most haunted hotel.
Yeah, we'll go to the Menger
Mhm.
bar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a great
Absolutely. I've been
but
there,
okay, I love that bar. This
and
is
I will go again. Well, and I think it's interesting on that topic too is you talk about, making things exclusive or authentic experiences, but it's also tiering that kind of exclusivity, right? So we hear a lot about airport lounges are expanding and people want that sort of hotel loyalty programs. They want to tier it. So it's interesting when we see that happen at any given type of event within the
right.
hotel industry is creating those other bespoke levels or tiers of experience for people, which occupy different types of spaces. So it's all very interesting to think about. And that brings us to the conclusion of yet another episode of Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast. And you know what that means, gentlemen. I don't even need to remind you. It is time for your metaphor, your comparison, your song. What is reminding you right now of how the hotel industry is looking at the moment? I think they're debating over who's going to go first.
So he pointed at me right now. So because and I'm gonna pick up on what he said earlier. This year is a headbanger for sure. I mean, demand's rising, there's a war, TSA is melting down, we had record snow, then we had record heat. And I
Yeah.
thought, I came up with and I came up with this idea, are we caught in the echo? And I
Okay.
thought, the echo of
Okay.
everything, the echo of life. And there's a
Okay.
song by that name, oddly enough, and it's brand new. And it's by the Foo Fighters. Get it? Headbanger, caught
Yes.
in the
Okay.
echo, kind of
Yeah.
all a play on this. And
Oh,
as
you
an
think the Foo
added
Fighters are headbangers?
yeah,
Okay.
this is
Have
a
you seen him
headbanging
live?
song.
I mean,
That okay. I
But
trust you.
he so some things you can't divide, some things you can't define. Sometimes you can't decide. That is where we're at right now in the hotel industry.
Oh,
I
yes.
like it.
Love it. I'm gonna have to revive our Spotify playlist, I think.
Yes.
I've let that languish. Okay, it's a headbanger.
Yeah.
Head
The
scratcher? Mm.
The obvious metaphor that I'm not going to use, but is clearly March Madness, right? That we are, and Vanderbilt lost on an absolute nail biter with 2 seconds to go, and our power forward heaved the ball, and it went in and out, and Vanderbilt didn't make
No.
it against Nebraska. That was truly March Madness. We're not going to talk about that. So my metaphor this month is that the hotel industry is like the kitchen, and what I mean by that is I have, for the first time now, played pickleball,
Oh,
and I
Jan's
learned
in his pickleball era.
My
what
oh my
the
god.
kitchen is. And the kitchen is the area next to the net where you can volley and where you have to be really strategic. And it's not just brute force, but you have to really think about what you're doing. So to me, the industry right now is just you have to be just very strategic and just slap around and cut your rates, but you have to just really know exactly where you're going to place the next ball. So that to me
Wait,
is the metaphor that works.
you
So,
okay,
you
go
go.
ahead.
Oh,
I have
oh,
a clarifying question,
I'll
but
let you
it's
clarify because then I'm gonna say I have a comment.
okay. You cannot volley in the kitchen or you
Cannot.
can't?
No,
Okay,
you
so you
cannot.
have
You're too
to
close to the net, so you have to.
alright, so you have to, like, overhead smash? I don't know anything about pickleball. What do you do there?
No, you lob the ball.
Oh, okay. Alright, don't play pickleball with me, listeners. Isaac, go
Well,
ahead.
my comment was we should all get together in Nashville, Tennessee to play pickleball at the Grand
2
Hyatt.
against 1? Oh my gosh. It's
No,
gonna
we
be
can we
those
we
2
can
against me.
we
Isaac, can we play together because Jan is now experienced?
yes, and we
Okay.
can find another listener or someone we know to play. I'm
We'll
sure
go on a
we have one, but at the Grand Hyatt, they have pickleball courts
They
at
do?
Nashville Yards. We can do that as a "Tell me more," the pickleball tournament.
You know, you said it from your lips to our listeners' ears. If anybody wants to invite us to host their inaugural Hotel Data pickleball tournament,
HDC.
maybe we'll
HDC.
say we're for
HDC.
hire. I'd have to practice. Um, I think maybe you would not want me on your team, but I would be happy to call the game and give the color commentary, as we know I can do so well with sports. All right, listeners, thank you for sticking with us for another episode. Hope you have a great month. Find us wherever you like to listen, including, of course, we are now on YouTube. Find all the news about the global hotel industry at costar.com/hotel news. Find these guys on LinkedIn. Ask them the burning questions that they did not answer in this episode for you. Thanks, guys. See you next
Thank
time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Terence Baker, News Editor, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I'm the host of The Upgrade, a CoStar News Hotels podcast for the EMEA region. In it, I discuss with special guests the pressures, challenges, joys and exhilaration that comes with managing, owning and developing hotels in our glorious multifaceted industry. Discovering the EMEA region from the scenic northern shores of Norway to heights of Table Mountain in South Africa, and most likely some chat about birdwatching, distance running and the English Premiership. Join us wherever you find your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify and on other platforms.
This episode of Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast, was recorded on March 24, 2026. The episode was edited by Sean McCracken. Find all hotel industry news at costar.com/hotel news. Thanks for listening.